hunt. My name is Tina Workman. I'm the co-chair of Labour Against the Witch Hunt, and I'm also involved in the Labour Left Alliance. I want to start off with saying a very loud and clear solidarity with all those thousands of left-wingers and socialists who've been wrongly smeared as anti-Semites, vilified for standing with Jackie Walker, slandered for supporting Marc Wadsworth, or hounded for speaking up against the atrocities conducted by the Israeli government, as well as Jeremy Corbyn. If, like me, you sat through last night's momentum rally in support of Jeremy Corbyn, this is a particular important point to make. There were about 10 speakers on the platform. How many do you think mentioned any of the other victims of the witch hunt? How many of them used the word witch hunt? How many of them do you think supported the gist of what Jeremy Corbyn got suspended for, which is, and I quote, one anti-Semite is too many. We all agree with that. And then he said, but the scale of the problem was also dramatically overstated for political reasons by our opponents. How many on the platform made an effort to engage with what Jeremy Corbyn said? It's a rhetorical question, of course, not a single one, not a single person made refer to what Corbyn said. It was all about, he's a nice guy, he's an anti-racist, etc., etc. He was entirely right in what he said, of course. It's a real shame he did not say so when he was the leader of the Labour Party, and it could have made a real difference in the Labour Party. At yesterday's rally, speaker after speaker revealed themselves as having swallowed the lie that the Labour Party has a huge problem with anti-Semitism, which culminated in John McDonnell's renewed apology to Jewish members. Not to you, Jackie, and not to you, Tony, I would have thought, other Jewish members. John basically appealed to Starmer to understand that there was a misunderstanding in Jeremy's comments. It was misinterpreted, and please would you kindly let Jeremy back in. It didn't demand anybody else being let in. Of course, hundreds have been suspended and expelled pretty much for saying what Jeremy Corbyn said. And sadly, neither McDonnell nor Corbyn himself stood up for them or questioned when that happened to those comrades. Diane Abbott, worryingly, and every single momentum speaker called for the full implementation of the EHRC report, which of course includes setting up an independent disciplinary process with the help of Jewish stakeholders. They don't mean Jewish Voice for Labour, needless to say. We must resist this. We can't just take this as, oh yeah, everybody agrees with this report. There are lots of problems with it. Deborah Hermans from Momentum said, the priority for the party must be how we improve, how we tackle anti-Semitism. That must be the problem, the priority for the party in this huge crisis that we're going through. Let's be clear, of course, there are some real anti-Semites in the Labour Party, just as they are in society. It would be statistically impossible otherwise. But I have seen dozens of suspensions and expulsion letters for anti-Semitism because somebody used the word Zionism, called the witch hunt a witch hunt, compared the actions of the Israeli government to that of the Nazis, or like Jeremy Corbyn pointed out that our opponents have exaggerated the problem for political reasons. That is not anti-Semitism. The minuscule number of cases with real anti-Semitism on display have been shamelessly exploited, exaggerated, and weaponized, and sometimes ignored. They have been ignored as well, as the leaked report shows. This is part of an international campaign to stop any criticism of Israel by labeling such criticisms as inherently and automatically anti-Semitic. And how far they've come is now evident in America, and I urge comrades to look at this. The Secretary of State there, Mike Pompeo, has just declared that he wants to label prominent NGOs like Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and Oxfam as anti-Semitic. This is the logical and entirely avoidable result of the failure to stand up to the witch hunt. And it's being exploited internationally. We have to understand this. And the reaction of the mainstream left, unfortunately, has been entirely inadequate. We have to, if we stay in the Labour Party, and there are differences amongst the speakers here tonight, we have to fight. There's no point rolling over, asking kindly for Jeremy to be let in and forgetting about all the other victims of the witch hunt. We have to take the right on. It's almost too late. But we want to discuss with you tonight how a real fight back should look like. We also want to look at the substance of the EHRC report, which we describe in our statement as a damn squib, sorry. And we want to have this discussion with a few comrades who've been through the mill a few times. We're very happy to welcome all of them, Jackie, Chris, Tony, and Marc. Though Marc, I can't see at the moment. I hope he's going to rejoin us. We're having about 10 minutes each from the main speakers, and then we want to bring in comrades from the floor so you can ask questions and make contributions, because it's really important, as Jackie said just earlier and in the run-up to this event. It's really important that we have free debate and discussion. We have to listen to each other and listen to the members as well. So the first speaker will be Tony Greenstein. Thank you.
Thank you. You've taken up part of what I've said already about momentum. Momentum's position is shameful. It's a class collaborationist agenda. We want to unite with Starmer, the same Starmer who's failed to mention the privatisation of the NHS, which has exacerbated the COVID crisis. The same Starmer who has in essence gone along with the legalisation of torture. I mean, this is absurd. The fight against anti-Semitism. Let's be clear. Corbyn was not suspended because for what he said. 3 months ago, it was trailed in the newspapers that Corbyn might be suspended once the report was out. I have no doubt whatsoever that Starmer intended to prove his mettle by suspending Corbyn come hell or high water, and that's what's happened. Let's be clear about that. Secondly, about the EHRC report. There are undoubtedly some good things in it. You know, things like you should know who is accusing you, you should know the reasons for your expulsion, etc. But that is really beside the point. When the EHRC, which is a state body, it is part of the state, maybe at one stage removed. It's stuffed with bankers, lawyers, city executives, and so on. Apparently it has not one black or Muslim commissioner. When it said that it was going to launch an investigation, Corbyn should have opposed it firmly. The left in the Labour Party should have opposed what was interference in the democratic political party by an organ of the state, regardless of what might be the outcome. And of course, its report has been weaponized. The papers, the press, have not concentrated really on what it has said, but the mere fact that it's found Labour guilty through really quite ropey legal arguments that Ken Livingstone is guilty of harassment. Harassment is about an individual. There's no class action called harassment. It's an extremely dubious legal argument, to say the least. It has made it up as it goes along. And our position should be the same. What happens in the Labour Party is the business of its members. It's no business of the EHRC. And our position should be really, I think, crystal clear about that. Secondly, and I have to repeat it, this is nothing to do with anti-Semitism. It never was to do with anti-Semitism. If people were so concerned about anti-Semitism, then they would point the finger at the Tories, who've spent 10 years in the European Parliament in alliance with fascist and anti-Semitic parties. And today we know that in the European Council, they've formed an alliance with groups like the Swedish Democrats, who walk around with swastikas in the middle of Stockholm. Again, it's nothing to do with anti-Semitism. If they wanted genuine anti-Semitism, there you have it. I can't really be more clear, but let's deal with this anti-Semitism, because I'm Jewish. I don't face anti-Semitism. If I drive a car, I'm not going to be stopped because I'm Jewish. Jews aren't disproportionately arrested and thrown in prison. Jews don't die in custody. Jews simply do not suffer from state racism. There is no Jewish Windrush scandal. There aren't Jews being hauled out of their beds and deported, maybe to Israel, because of course the Zionist myth is that that is our real home. Anti-Semitism is a marginal prejudice today. If our priority is going to be to fight racism, and that's a very good priority, the priority is to deal with Islamophobia, is to deal with the ongoing scandal of people who were deported illegally, who are British citizens who were deported and are still not being brought back and have still not been compensated. This is utter and total hypocrisy. And for momentum, the so-called forward momentum, the replacement for Landsman, they defeated Landsman's mob, to come out and say that anti-Semitism is our main priority shows an utter and total capitulation by the so-called left. It is really shameful, to say the least. And you know, if you repeat a lie often enough, as Goebbels said, then people come to accept it as true. But the fact is, it's not true. Anti-Semitism is not the problem with the Labour Party. And therefore to say we want to unite with Starmer is absolutely absurd. Starmer, for a start, does not want to unite with the left of the Labour Party. He wants to eliminate them, to completely marginalise them. To say that you want to unite with a person who is your deadly enemy just shows how bankrupt those who've replaced John Landsman are politically. I have nothing more really I can say about that. And I'll go on even further, the utter and total hypocrisy of it. If someone said that they wanted to kill Jewish children, then they would be drummed out of the Labour Party. If they said they supported shooting Jews on sight, they would be drummed out of the Labour Party. Yet Luke Akehurst went on Twitter and campaigned around support for Israel's use of snipers in Gaza to mow down unarmed demonstrators who are protesting about the fact they live in the world's largest open-air prison. And what's happened to him? Absolutely nothing. He's standing for Labour's national executive. So the only conclusion we can draw is that Jewish lives are more valuable than Palestinian lives. And if that's not racist, I don't know what is. We all know, or we should know, that the reason why they clamoured in 2018 to introduce the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism was because they could not accuse people of the traditional understood definition of anti-Semitism. You know, my dad was in Cable Street, the Battle of Cable Street against the fascists in 1936, which the Board of Deputies opposed. They told Jews to stay at home. He didn't need a definition of anti-Semitism to know what anti-Semitism was. It was staring him in the face. If he walked down the wrong road in the East End, like Ridley Road, he got his head kicked in. That was anti-Semitism. He didn't need to look up a 500+ word definition to find out whether someone was being anti-Semitic. It's obvious. As Judge Wendell Holmes of the US Supreme Court said, I know it when I see it. He was talking about obscenity, but he could have been talking about anti-Semitism as well. So all of this is a complete propaganda hoax, but it's a ruling class narrative. And the Labour has bought into it. Not only the Labour Party, but Momentum, and unfortunately, Jeremy Corbyn, because although, of course, I support the reinstatement of Jeremy Corbyn, he laid the basis for the witch hunt. He was the one who pushed the idea that we should have fast-track expulsions. He was the one who jettisoned and threw his friends overboard. When Chris Williamson was reinstated, Tom Watson got up a 150 signature petition from Labour lords and right-wingers. That was the time that Jeremy Corbyn should have spoken out and said, Chris Williamson is not a racist. He should not be suspended. Jenny Formby should have agreed with that. Instead, she suspended him immediately. And indeed, just before his court hearing, he was re-suspended again, just in case they lost the court case. That is what is so outrageous. They were complicit in the very witch hunt, which is now taking them down as well. And therefore, we actually have to build a fighting alternative. Now, my view is I'm not sure that the left in the Labour Party is going to be strong enough now, because we are quite marginalised. And I think we do have to talk about creating some kind of socialist movement which bridges both those inside the Labour Party and the increasing number of socialists and Corbyn supporters who are now outside the Labour Party, either because they've been expelled or because they've left in disgust. So that is quite a big task, I think, for us. But we all know what this is really about. And this is about supporting the world's only apartheid state. When Benjamin Netanyahu says, in the event of annexation of a third of the West Bank, Palestinians living there won't be given citizenship. What else is that but an apartheid state? And this is what the IHRA is about, because it says you can't criticize Israel unless you do it in the same way as you criticize Britain or Netherlands or any other so-called democratic country. But we, today at least, don't occupy other people's countries. We are not putting people under a permanent subjugation. That is what Israel is doing. And it's ruling via an extremely vicious occupation. And the IHRA is designed in order to thwart any anti-Zionist criticism of what Israel does as a so-called Jewish state. So I think we have a number of major tasks to take on board. If I can answer just one question which I've seen, which is from Mick Napier, he says, is Zio anti-Semitic? And my answer is no, it's not. Zio is short, I believe, for Zionist. A Zionist is not necessarily a Jew. In fact, I go further. The majority of Zionists in the world today are not Jewish. There are American fundamentalist Christians who combine support for Zionism and support for anti-Semitism, which is quite understandable because people like Tommy Robinson are also ardently Zionist. You know, if you're an anti-Semite, then you will support Zionism because it's the best way of getting rid of your unwanted Jews. And that's what all this hypocrisy is about. The people who are most anti-Semitic, like Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, or indeed Donald Trump, who's the most pro-Zionist president the United States have, is also anti-Semitic. Trump, when telling 4 black members of Congress that they should go home, although 3 of them are born in the United States, also attacked them because they were anti-Semitic. That is what the nonsense of anti-Semitism is today. And calling someone an anti-Semite is the same as calling someone a communist in the McCarthy era. So we have to be absolutely clear as to where we stand. We defend Jeremy Corbyn despite Jeremy Corbyn's politics. And I will leave it at that because I know we've got very little time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. I should say that unfortunately, Ken Livingstone can't make it today after all. We would have taken him up on his support for Keir Starmer, which is a bit weird. Yes, we would have discussed that. We don't agree with him on that point, but it has to be said, Ken is being singled out in that report, the EHRC report, and that's why we invited him, because he's definitely nothing he said or done was anti-Semitic. The report doesn't even try to show that he was said anything anti-Semitic. That's quite important in the report if you read it. All it says as proof is 20 MPs complained about him and an unspecified number of Labour Party members complained that they thought what he said was a harassment and stuff. And that's enough to be mentioned in the report. Had he complained to the EHRC, I think just like Chris, he probably would have been taken out, had his name taken out. So it'd be really interesting, and I'm sure Chris will get into this because he was supposed to be the 3rd person singled out in the report, and he has managed to overturn that. They backed down. So I'm really glad to have Chris here who can tell us a bit more about this.
Yes, I mean, let me just start by picking up a point that you made at the start, Chair, where you said that, statistically speaking, there will be anti-Semites inside the Labour Party, and that might very well be true. I've been a member of the Labour Party or had been a member of the Labour Party for 44 years, but I've never met one. So whilst it might be true, and I'm sure probably statistically speaking it is, to suggest in some way that Labour has a major problem with anti-Semitism is, of course, absolutely absurd. And the whole EHRC report was basically used as a political weapon, frankly, to take down a a socialist leader of the Labour Party, to derail the whole Corbyn project, to derail a socialist project, and to derail a project that would have implemented a ethical foreign policy. Now, I know we weren't in government, but the very fact that we had the official opposition taking up positions in support of the Palestinian people, challenging the military-industrial complex, was unconscionable to those vested interests, and clearly unconscionable to a large number of the members of the Parliamentary Labour Party, who set about using every foul means at their disposal to sabotage Jeremy Corbyn's leadership from the get-go. In fact, they tried to sabotage even before he was elected, if you remember. First of all, it was to try and keep him off the ballot. He managed to get onto the ballot paper. And then the smears started, and they didn't stop. The problem we've got, frankly, is caused, or has been caused, by this appeasement strategy. The appeasement strategy has been an absolute disaster from start to finish. And you know, a number of us were making this point repeatedly. I made the point repeatedly to the campaign group in Parliament, to the so-called core group. These were the MPs who didn't actually resign or sign the no confidence motion in Jeremy Corbyn. They weren't necessarily on the left, but the people who, if you like, remained loyal to his leadership when the coup started in 2016. I made the point repeatedly that you know, we absolutely have to fight back against this, because look, where is the evidence that Labour is riven with anti-Semites? It's absolute nonsense. And this sort of strategy of appeasement and capitulation was merely emboldening those who were seeking to attack us. And you know, every concession, the point that I made on repeatedly, every concession we make was taken, and then they wanted more. I mean, you know, they took out Tony, then they took out Ken Livingstone, then they took out Marc Wadsworth, then they took out Jackie Walker. And many others who are less well known, of course, were also removed from the party, suspended and expelled and smeared. People have lost their jobs over this. I mean, it's an absolute outrageous smear campaign, and it is McCarthyite. And Tony's absolutely right when he says it's the equivalent of the McCarthyite era, and you know, just substitute the word communist for anti-Semite. And I hope that people have suffered, you know, severe mental ill health as a consequence of being accused in this way, having the name dragged through the gutter, and as I say, it's had a profound impact on people's livelihoods as well. And we should be speaking out about this. And it's almost like Einstein's definition of insanity, trying to do the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I remember when I was reinstated, and then Tony made the point that around 150 MPs and peers signed a motion to go to the next parliamentary Labour Party meeting, calling for the whip to be withdrawn from me for a year, and for an investigation to be mounted as to how it was that I was reinstated in the first place. And John McDonnell's advice to me was to apologise again and again, offer to meet anybody who's been hurt, offended or distressed by what you've said, any MP that is, do the same for any NEC member, go and see the Board of Deputies, go and see the Jewish Leadership Council, and go and see your local synagogue. I mean, this is a preposterous notion. I mean, apart from the kind of indignity and the humiliation of doing that and apologising for something that, you know, I hadn't done, I wasn't guilty of anything. The fact is, politically, it was ludicrous. It just wasn't working. When we'd been trying this appeasement strategy for 4 years at that point in time. And I made this point to John and said, look, John, no, there's no way I'm going to do that. And what you need to do is to make a statement in support of my reinstatement of the party, because I've stuck by the party's Kafkaesque rules. I haven't spoken about the disciplinary process as how it's affected me. I haven't been able to go and defend myself. While everybody out there, all the enemies, if you like, all those people who were seeking to undermine Jeremy and me and others, were using every opportunity to smear me, drag my name through the gutter. I had no means of defending myself. Not a single member of the Socialist Campaign Group publicly spoke out. The Socialist Campaign Group wouldn't even issue a statement or a collective statement of support. And I had said to John, you need to go out, issue a statement in my defence and go on the media this weekend and defend me. But he wouldn't do that. I then also asked the Socialist Campaign Group to make a collective statement on the basis that we're all socialists. We all believe in solidarity. We all believe that an injury to one is an injury to all of us, don't we? And again, they just wouldn't do it. Now, I'm pleased to see that the campaign group has issued a statement in support of Jeremy. But frankly, the public pronouncements that I've seen from members of those that have made a statement have been pretty mealy-mouthed, it's got to be said. And everything has to be, prefixed with a statement about how much they abhor anti-Semitism. I mean, this is just ridiculous. And we should have taken on the EHRC. This is what really grieves me, because had the party not capitulated yet again, and Tony made this point about the EHRC, we should have called into question what role did they have to investigate the Labour Party in the first place? For goodness sake, particularly when you're looking at some of the outrageous anti-Semitic remarks, never mind other racism in the Conservative Party, for example. But they had no place investigating the Labour Party, and they had no real grounds either. And, I was able to, thanks to the incredible generosity of grassroots members, to put together a top legal team. And we were able to totally force a U-turn by the EHRC in their attempt to smear me and to accuse me of unlawful conduct. Essentially, what they wanted to say was I was an anti-Semite, based on this regurgitating the ridiculous accusations that were put to me which led to my original suspension, which were, was then obviously thrown out by the High Court. But they were recycling those self-same accusations. And he went further than that, because when we pushed them back, they came and they reduced the accusations against me, and it was just down to just one. And obviously, we pushed back again. But in order to justify that, they weren't simply relying on the evidence that they had before them. They went out proactively to canvass for new evidence in order to justify accusing me and naming me in their report. So the organisation, in my opinion, is utterly discredited. It's been used as a right-wing attack dog. And I produced a video a few months ago, really exposing the flaws in the Equalities and Human Rights Commission. If people haven't seen it, I'd recommend you go onto my Facebook feed or Twitter feed and look it up. You'll be able to watch it. It's about a 7-minute long video. And really, the EHRC has got no credibility at all now. And look, I think we need to consider, what do we do going forward? We know the EHRC is a broken, discredited organisation. We know that the appeasement strategy is an utter disaster. And we have to fight back and rail against that and demand that the Socialist Campaign Group not only issue a kind of half-hearted statement in support of Jeremy Corbyn, they need to be coming out on the record and demanding that Jeremy Corbyn obviously is reinstated, but actually challenging the notion that Labour has a major issue on this. And as I've already said, they feel that the necessity that they have to deprecate anti-Semitism in every statement that they make on this question, rather than actually, focusing on the real facts that they must know about. So, in my opinion, they need to be putting more pressure on the leadership of the party. They need to be bold and brave and stand up for the Labour Party's reputation, stand up for their own reputation, stand up for the reputation of grassroots activists up and down the country, spend their lives, many of them, fighting racism, me included, going back to the 1970s when I was confronting fascists on the street with the Anti-Nazi League and casual racists on building sites, nearly getting my head kicked for my troubles on more than a few occasions. And I think we also need to be calling on the trade unions to be taking steps. I mean, I've been pushing for only recently, obviously, since this came out, but I want to build this campaign up for a defund and disaffiliate campaign, unless the Labour Party changes its ways. Because what is the point? I mean, this is no longer the political voice of the organised Labour movement. This is the political voice of corporate capitalism, the political voice of the Zionist lobby. Let's be honest about it. And we know that the people behind the complaints against Jeremy are out Zionist organisations. So we need to be calling out Zionism for what it is. It is an ideology which is inconsistent with socialism. Zionists should not be members of the Labour Party, in my opinion. And if that doesn't work, then I think we need to be looking seriously at not just an alternative movement, but an alternative vehicle, an alternative electoral political vehicle. Because the Labour Party, in my opinion, is beyond repair. I know some people are sticking with it, but if they are going to stick with it, like you were saying in your opening remarks, Chair, you have to speak out. You have to demand that the party actually is the voice of the working class, is a voice for a pressure point for socialism, and is a voice for an ethical foreign policy. If it's none of those things, I mean, Harold Wilson talked about the Labour Party as a moral crusade, or it's nothing. At the moment, it's worse than nothing. And do people really want to be a member of an organisation that is as bad as what the Labour Party has become? And so I think people are under a moral obligation while you're sticking in the Labour Party to actually speak out, and as members of the trade union movement to speak out and to get behind this certainly defund campaign, but I would prefer a defund the disaffiliation campaign. That's the way to bring pressure on Keir Starmer and the disgraceful direction that he's taking the party in at the moment. And that's the way, in my opinion, to offer real and genuine support to Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you very much, Chris. I quite agree with that. It's very important to, if you stay in the Labour Party, if you're allowed to stay in the Labour Party, that's another question. A lot of us are not allowed to stay in the Labour Party, but we're seeing thousands are currently resigning. It's totally understandable why your comrades are resigning, but this is, of course, exactly what the right want you to do. So I know Chris has a slightly different perspective. In my opinion, and Labour Against the Witch Hunt, Labour Left Alliance's opinion, we would urge comrades, if you can stay, do stay to fight. But that is the key point. And the ongoing civil war in the Labour movement is the present focus of the class war. It's not much fun, it's not pretty, but the fight for freedom of discussion and democratic decision-making in our movement is essential for the struggle for socialism. And a lot of the working class sees the Labour Party as its natural home and will so for the foreseeable future. Any kind of other party we might launch now, we have to consider the fact that because of the undemocratic first past the post system, makes such a prospect extremely difficult for it to grow and become a serious force. Having said that, I mean, both the Labour Against the Witch Hunt and the Labour Left Alliance do accept in its ranks members and non-members of the Labour Party, and we are very happy to collaborate with Chris and other socialists, etc. So we need to have a discussion though very soon, because there is a danger that lots of socialists are just drifting away. And that is a real problem. Okay, our next speaker, I'm sorry for rumbling. Our next speaker is Marc Wadsworth. Very happy to welcome him here. One of the first cases after Tony, I think, of a comrade being expelled, and on very weak grounds. I think he was maybe perhaps up to Jeremy Corbyn, see what happens to him. The weakest case. I think that was quite clear. So we're very glad to welcome you, comrade.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you, comrade Tina. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, all good.
Yeah, I've put on record on several occasions that I'm totally against all forms of hatred, anti-black racism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism included. But I take no lectures from the crooked EHRC packed with Tory stooges. Its 2 black commissioners were sacked, let's remember. And I applaud Chris Williamson and the work he's done in exposing this appalling body and its corruption. Have a look at his videos. He's done a masterful job. It should be a panorama program rather than the one that John Ware disgustingly put out with the help of Sam Matthews, and I'm looking at suing both of them for defamation because they called me a racist in the Jewish Chronicle, which I took to the press watchdog Ipso and got them to change more than a dozen stories that lied about me to correct them. Despite 2 dossiers on Conservative Party Islamophobia from Boris Johnson downwards, the EHRC has refused to investigate its government paymasters. Thanks to lawyers, Chris Williamson's lawyers getting involved, they backed off from naming me in their hatchet job of a report. This hasn't been questioned. Any of this corruption hasn't been questioned by the biased anti-Labour, anti-Jeremy Corbyn mainstream media. It makes me ashamed to be a journalist of more than 3 decades standing. The spineless cowardice of my media colleagues demonstrates that they've become propagandists rather than the objective, impartial reporters that they were trained to be, on whom the public can rely. MSM journalists have become as discredited as politicians and estate agents. And that's why young people have, in their droves, stopped paying any attention to the British Bias Corporation, Sky, the broadcast of the newspapers, and they use social media to talk with each other. And that's why, you know, Zoom is so important, TikTok, Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook. That's where the real truth is being told. As Malcolm X once said, if you're not careful, the newspapers have you hating the people who are oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. There's a big resentment building up among African, Caribbean, and Asian people, Labour's most loyal supporters, about the party's systemic anti-Black racism and Islamophobia, which has been ignored. And that's the danger, isn't it? The privileging of one form of oppression over another. And I thought, Tony, comrade, you were brilliant in describing what real anti-Jewish hatred looks like. And it's not what we've been seeing in the Labour Party. I have, you know, there's the black wall of support for Labour in more than 70 seats in Britain, parliamentary seats, and that wall is crumbling. We talk about the red wall, but what about the black wall? I have Jewish people, I know they've been traumatized by all of this scaremongering. They should be black people's natural allies against a common enemy. That's what happened with the civil rights movement. If you saw that film, Mississippi Burning, you'll see that 2 Jewish activists were murdered by the Ku Klux Klan alongside a black activist. In South Africa, we think of Joe Slovo, Ruth First, who was murdered, his wife, by the racist apartheid regime. Dennis Goldberg, who died not long ago, all stalwart supporters of the fight against racism. I want to see a return to that. Let's get away from the fake news, the anti-Semitism scaremongering, the weaponizing of anti-Jewish hatred by the right wing for cynical, anti-pro-Palestinian Jeremy Corbyn purposes. Any criticism of settler colonialist ethnic cleansing Israel has been branded as anti-Semitism. I mentioned this in my new book, Comrade Sack, by the way. The fight back against the witch hunt has been weakened, I have to say, and agree with Comrade Chris, by the strategy of the Corbyn leadership of appeasement, apology, and capitulation that has seen Ken, Jackie, and Chris, and me, and many other allies thrown under a bus. There are those in the leadership of the Labour left today, and you've heard criticism of momentum, who have reacted to the outrageous, unprecedented suspension of Jeremy Corbyn by calling for calm. To appease Keir Starmer, the man that describes Black Lives Matter as a moment and not a movement, shamefully. He's become the police services, the police force's best friend in Parliament as a former, what was he, Attorney General, Director of Public Prosecutions. But there's great anger out there at this unprecedented disciplinary action against a former leader of a mainstream political party in Britain. And that anger needs to be channeled into a strong fight back. Why haven't the left on the Labour National Executive Committee demanded an emergency meeting to unsuspend Jeremy Corbyn? After all, this suspension would have been done in their name. Everybody who's been disciplined will know that when you get the letter from the General Secretary, it is in the name of the National Executive of the Labour Party. They must come off their knees and start to fight. Fight for the membership. Fight for justice. It's good that the 7 trade unions of the 12 affiliated to the Labour Party have issued a statement opposing Jeremy Corbyn's suspension, but they must use their muscle to get it reversed. The Socialist Campaign Group of more than 30 MPs must do the same. They should be on our radios, on our TVs, in the newspapers, in the media, speaking out, all 30 of them, defending the person who is one of their members who stood a chance of getting into government for the Labour Party, had it not been for the saboteurs in the head office who have been given six-figure bungs by Keir Starmer. These saboteurs for really doing the work of Tom Watson and others to prevent a Labour government. They've been paid off when we were told that actually the party had a good case to defeat them in the courts. And yet the likes of Jackie, Ken, Chris, myself, we've been thrown to the wolves. We can win this. We must win this to save the mass party of the working class in Britain. Labour was started by a Keir. Let's not let a Keir kill it off. A luta continua.
Thank you very much, comrade. Excellent. Nice point pointing out the Keirs. Yeah. Just to let you know, comrades, we've got now over 400 people in the meeting. Over 120 are watching it live. So this is certainly a reflection that the fight back can happen, and there are lots of people who are angry what's been happening, and we have to continue that fight, and I totally agree. Good points by Mark. Why is there no emergency meeting of the NEC? Why is the Socialist Campaign Group quite so useless? But as Chris pointed out, they were useless over his case. You would have thought that they at least managed a campaign like retweeting what Jeremy said. Everybody retweeting what he said. Will they really suspend 30 MPs? You know, it was a potential for a Spartacus moment. There still is a potential, and really, it's hard to see that after 5 years of fighting, they have learned very little about the need to stand up and do something, and it's very much a keeping quiet. I understand that Keir Starmer was in the meeting last night in the Momentum rally and said he would be watching, and basically everybody followed the line and nobody dared to say anything, which is not what we're doing. The next person to speak, very glad to welcome Jackie Walker. I thought she's not mentioned in the report. As it turns out, she is. Tell us more.
Hi, yeah, I will tell you more, but I just want to say that I found the contributions this evening actually exceptional, all of them really exceptional. And isn't it great that we've been able to give people an opportunity to actually both hear useful information and opinion and later to speak. And actually, this is the only place that has done that. And I have to say, I think other organisations on the left need to be thinking about what they're doing at this point. So first of all, I would just want to not repeat everything you've just heard, because I agree with virtually all about everything I've said, but I actually also as well want to kind of compliment Tony Greenstein, because if you remember for some years, Tony was saying, this is actually all of this victimization of members. It's not about the members, because what they want is Corbyn. They will go for Corbyn. If they get Chris, if they get Mark, if they get me, if they get Jackie Walker, they will go for Corbyn. And all the time with the concessions that were being made by the very people who we heard yesterday and today asking people to stay calm, this is what has happened. There has been no line drawn under anybody or anything. And why should there be? These are hungry ghosts. You feed them and they always and still want more. The change is when the membership were being targeted, it was about Corbyn. Then, of course, he's no longer leader. And now that Corbyn has been got, so to speak. It is now about the membership. And what we're going to see is this being used to actually purge the Labour Party of the left, but not just the Labour Party. If you notice what's happening in the media, the left is now being called de facto racist. But this is not even just an attack on the left. This is an attack on anti-racism, and that's how dangerous it is. So let's, even if we're going to disagree about whether you should stay in or outside the Labour Party, for me, there's something bigger going on here. This is an attack on anti-racists, and you see it happening both in America and here, where anti-racists are being called racists. This is a real campaign. Now, having said that, I do want to talk about the EHRC report, and I think it's very important. I agree, actually, and I think it was a shame that the EHRC as an organisation wasn't properly critiqued before this. Just do it. It's kind of shameful when you have a look at it. This is a government body, and it's a very partisan government body. It doesn't have, as Tony said, any representative from the most oppressed groups. For example, there's nobody from the Romanis. There is nobody from African Caribbeans on that group at all. When Macpherson came out with his report, remembering that that was also an official report, if you remember, not just the media, but every commentator around was examining that report and critiquing it. Suddenly, we find an extraordinary consistency with the fact that not just that we should agree with everything it says, but that we shouldn't even raise a critique on what it says. That is a very, very dangerous priority. I am not willing to give up my judgment for any government body, and I'm ashamed of our representatives who apparently are. And when they listed themselves yesterday in Momentum, falling over themselves to say we have to agree with every single dot and word, I just thought, well, actually, what is the point of having political debate if that's what we're going to do? And I think that particularly for Black people, Mark already raised this issue about the Black Wall falling, and the Black Wall, of course, being those constituencies, particularly in urban areas, which have significant voters who are people of colour, and what will happen next time. I mean, I don't know how many of you have read the report, but the report itself actually commented on the fact that what had happened and the way that the anti-Semitism had been handled had actually disadvantaged other minorities. Black people aren't stupid about this. And just recently, we have seen Black Lives Matter applying to become a political party. Now, where that goes or what that means, who knows? But it's a sign that there is real unhappiness about what's going on and the way that the political debate, particularly on race, is being handled here. Now, apart from a very few left-wing outlets like, the Canarian, Squawk Box, Morning Star, and even Novara Media, the consistency in the media about, we have to accept every word of what it says is, like I said, just extraordinary. I say even Novara Media, because it seems to me that there are a number of people on the left who have particularly short memories on what they were saying when Tony was expelled and Mark was expelled and Chris was expelled and Ken Livingstone was expelled. When some of those people went, yeah, well, this is, great. Now that will be the end of it. I would like to ask those people to reflect again on the kind of commentary that they have been raising in the last few years. And talking about the press, I heard this extraordinary comment today, which was from one of the executives of the EHRC, and he was talking to Friedland in the Guardian, and he said, now just listen to this. He said, it doesn't matter whether it's 30% or 3% or 0.3% of Labour members who are anti-Semitic, because, you know, that doesn't matter. Now, hold on, this is extraordinary. This is a report from a government body that is telling us that evidence and numbers make no difference at all. And that's the other point I want to make very strongly, that if we actually go along with this nonsense gibberish, that it doesn't matter how many it was found to be, then just consider where we're going to get to. Just to say something about the EHRC report and me, I didn't make any representations, actually, none at all, for a number of reasons. And the interesting thing about that is, not only did they not use my case, and there might be lots of reasons not to use my case, but they did actually refer to my case. I think it was on page 27. And what they were talking about was the lack of fairness in the way that people who had been accused of anti-Semitism have actually been dealt with. And of course, this is not something that the media or Keir Starmer, or in fact, even the socialist MPs have raised. That's what they were talking about. And it was obviously referring to me. And what they were saying about it was this fact that there were no records to be found about how the decision to expel me had come about. Now, just think about that. Because even though I withdrew from what was a charade, and the EHRC is now backing up my decision that it was a charade, by the way, that even though that I withdrew from that, the charade went on for 2 working days before they told, I believe it was the Jewish Chronicle, that I'd been expelled, who then told me I'd been expelled, just like Jeremy Corbyn. There is a fine tradition, by the way, of the Labour Party telling the media that you've been expelled before you have. So anyway, in that hearing, there was a note taker. I know her exactly. I remember her face because she happened to be the only other Black person in the room. There was a note taker. So are we to believe that there was a 2-day hearing where evidence against me was examined and this note taker didn't take any notes? So the question becomes, what happened to those notes? Did they end up in the same shredder that all the other bits of paper that those people who left the party put the documents that they didn't want people to know about? And why didn't they want to know? Why didn't they want anybody to know about what was supposedly evidence against me? I mean, this is outrage after outrage. I do want to say something about Ken before I stop speaking, however. And this I'm saying in a very heartfelt way as a Black person, as a Black woman of 66 years old. Ken Livingstone did more for me as a Black individual, did more for me as a Black teacher and one of the first Black teachers in the IHRA, did more for my children than any other politician in my memory. And we, as a movement, have enough to be thankful to him for, that in the future, those people who condemn him now will be covered in shame. So I'd say to those people who last night asked us to stay calm, asked us to sit on our hands, asked us to stay silent, don't be calm, be outraged. Don't be calm, be outspoken. If you're going to stay in the party, and I think you should for the moment, the only reason to stay in the party is to stay and speak out. And let's make sure they don't ever forget that we know exactly what's happened and we know exactly why it's happened. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Quite right. Very powerful. And I think this is a key point. And I think this is also the role that organizations like Labour Against the Witch Hunt and the Labour Left Alliance have now got to play. We're also acting as a memory and explaining and going on about it. And I don't know how many times I've been accused of going on about the witch hunts, not the only show in town, etc. It's the key show in town. It's the reason we've been defeated. It's the reason the biggest opportunity in a lifetime has been squandered. Is the inability and the lack of even trying to stand up to the right, and instead trying to appease them. And as Chris quite rightly said, at least if that would work, but it clearly didn't. It clearly didn't. From day one, the efforts to appease the right never worked once. Every time we took a step back, when I say we, the Corbyn leadership took a step back, the right pushed further. So it's not a method that will work, and we will continue to go on about it because this goes way beyond the Labour Party. It goes even way beyond the Labour movement. I've already mentioned what's going on in America with trying to label NGOs as anti-Semitic. There are efforts now, you're not allowed to teach anti-capitalism in school. That's going to be forbidden properly because there's a touch of anti-Semitism about it, isn't it? It's all anti-Semitism. There are efforts to stop funding universities, as comrades will have heard, who refuse to adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance misdefinition of anti-Semitism. They're being charged with, they're being threatened with having funding withdrawn. We are organizing a campaign on that at the moment as well. And this is going further and further and further. And as Jackie quite rightly said, this is it's clearly not about fighting anti-Semitism. It's not even getting rid of Corbyn. It is an attempt to destroy the left, and it destroy any alternative to capitalism, and certainly any alternative to that is speaking out against the atrocities in Israel, which is the main ally of the US and Western imperialism in the Middle East. And this is all part of a very important campaign that we have to resist. We now want to open this up for this meeting for question and comments. Please, if you can, click the blue raise hand button. We want to hear from you. Try to keep it short because we do want to bring all the main speakers back in. There are a lot of questions in the Q&A. I'm hoping that our speakers can look at them and answer a few if you can in writing, but perhaps also when you're coming back at the end of our meeting. I think at about 20 to 8, the latest, we want to bring back the main speakers to summing up, perhaps a little bit earlier than that. There's lots of people have got their hands up already. I will make you all panelists so we can see you on screen. The first person I'm going to bring in is Graham Bush, please. Hi, Graham.
Hi. Can you hear me, comrades? Yeah?
Yes, very well.
Firstly, I just want to say solidarity to everybody on the platform and all victims of this witch hunt. As Jackie's partner, I know the toll it takes on all of you. We're tough on the left, but we're also human. And to be accused daily of being anti-Semitic and racist is not only a travesty, it's damaging. Above all, I want to express solidarity, like Jackie did, with Ken Livingstone, so outrageously singled out in the report. He is the best anti-racist our party has ever produced, and it's important we never forget that. Now, I want to make 2 statements that can get me in trouble, so let me do it now. One, the EHRC report is fundamentally flawed, and it has a number of recommendations which I do not accept. It is outrageous that a government body can produce a report that is somehow above scrutiny. Secondly, Jeremy was right when he said that allegations of anti-Semitism in the party had been greatly exaggerated for reasons of factional interest. Now, for that, comrades, I can be suspended and expelled, and that is an outrage. And that brings me on really to the last point I want to make, because I'll be short. It's about staying in the Labour Party. Now, for the last 5 years, the issue for me wasn't even posed. It was absolutely obvious. And I still say there's no way I'm leaving the Labour Party and doing the right job for them. But I think I've now, and we now, have to justify it. And there is no point at all in staying in the Labour Party if we do, as we have been told to do, keep our heads down, keep silent, be diplomatic, appeal to Keir Starmer to change his mind. This is nonsense. If we do that, there is no point in being in the Labour Party. And our job for all of us is to be in political struggle to tell the truth. Now, last night in Thanet, we had 2 meetings. One was a meeting of our General Committee, and on a resolution by me, almost unanimously, I think one against, a resolution calling for Jeremy's reinstatement was passed. Immediately went on to a meeting of Thanet's Labour left, and we decided practically unanimously that our role was in the Labour Party, but on condition we speak out. So our job is above all, always, always, always to tell the truth. Don't allow the book burners to have their say, and solidarity to all comrades in struggle. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Graham. Couldn't agree more.
Okay, good evening, comrades. Thank you, Tony, Mark, Chris, Jackie, and of course, Tina. Thank you for highlighting so many valid points about the nature of the EHRC and the endless appetite of our opponents. What's so vital about tonight is free speech, isn't it? That's that right to have a safe space and to talk and learn together, because that is what, for me, has most certainly been a casualty, and that should matter to the left. It matters to me. My question is, what do comrades think is the narrative, the thinking, the strategy of the left? Momentum, the SCG, Unite Leadership, LRC, and so on. What in calling for conciliation, the constant call for unity, 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 always reactive, never proactive. I'm genuinely interested in any insights and what they see as the long-term strategy. Do you think the left have one? Is it just hanging on in there? And what is the play? Is there a line in the sand?
Good questions. I'm not sure we're going to find out the answer. John Davis, please, next.
Thanks everybody for those very heartfelt contributions. I've been running an internal monologue without stopping. I suspect it kept going when I was asleep. And in some ways it's been quite a futile monologue, because an awful lot of it is going over the conversations, the arguments of the last 4 or 5 years. Could I have expressed that differently? Would I have been more persuasive if? And going over those repeated warnings that if we didn't make a stand 5, 4, 3, 2 a year ago against these false accusations, it would eventually end with Corbyn. So I'm just going to leave all that. What I'd like to do is just talk, just ask the question, if now isn't the time to start thinking about how do we build a socialist movement? Because I don't think, with respect, Graham, our job is to speak out. Yes, we do that, but we do that with a purpose, a concrete purpose of building a movement. And I think remaining in the Labour Party, comrades, and I am still in the Labour Party, although under investigation for the second time, I think remaining in the Labour Party, yes, we will be speaking to each other, and we will be speaking to people who've treated us with contempt for the last 5 years. We won't be speaking to all those tens of thousands who have either left or who weren't
persuaded by the project in the first place. So my feeling is that sooner or later, and I'm convinced this will happen, there will be a movement, a new grassroots movement formed. And there are a number of fragments and initiatives. Chris Williamson's is obviously one of them. And those fragments, those groups will have to start talking to each other and form something new, because the Labour Party is completely controlled by the right wing, the Parliamentary Labour Party. I mean, I respect your passion and your hopeful passion, Mark, but the campaign group are useless, utterly useless. My own MP, supported by Momentum, replacing Louise Ellman, issued a criticism of Corbyn today. They are certainly not going to resign the whip, which is what any principled MP would do. They're not going to take a stand. And the regions and the CLPs, for a lot of them, certainly ours is under the control of the new careerist Momentum lot. So I think that sooner rather than later, there have to be conversations to talk about a grassroots, a new grassroots. So yeah, that's my view.
Thanks, comrade. Hi, Elia.
Hi, I've just been asked to come in. I did miss the very beginning of the meeting, but I did catch Mark and Jackie and Chris, so that was great. I don't have a great deal to say, but I've been asked to come in, and there are many, many points that have been made very well. I haven't quite finished reading the report. Jewish Voice for Labour are doing a forensic analysis of the document, not just the general overview. And there's been some fantastic commentary already that we've published, and many others have. But one of the points that I'm sure I'm not the only person who's picked up. I mean, even, and I did put it in the chat, the Keir Starmer commissioned a report to be led by Doreen Lawrence about the impact of COVID on the disproportionate impact on COVID of people from Black and Asian communities in particular. And that was released on Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday that the EHRC announced that they were going to release this report on Thursday. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. It may well be a complete coincidence, but it's waited so long. And yet, once again, the needs of Black people disproportionately dying from this terrible disease has been eclipsed by the anti-Semitism crisis in the Labour Party. So I'm drafting something at the moment for JBL about who's missing from the EHRC report. The EHRC were given terms of reference, or chose terms of reference, that meant they would inevitably find the Labour Party guilty, because we all know that the procedures for handling complaints were appalling. Mark and Tony, I think I caught the end of his, and Chris and Jackie have all described their own experiences. So they were inevitably going to find the party guilty, but they didn't make a comparison with how complaints about racism towards Black people or travellers or gypsies or Muslim people were handled. Completely missing. And of course, the big missings are the impact of all of this on Palestinians. And we will be issuing a statement making those points probably tomorrow now. And it's very dangerous. And this idea, which I think somebody else mentioned, this very idea that criticizing a government report or a government agency report makes you guilty of anti-Semitism in this case, is ludicrous and dangerous, and not just dangerous for the Labour Party, not just dangerous around the anti-Semitism discussions, but actually what the implications of that is for free speech more generally. So we'll carry on doing our work. I'm really pleased that this meeting has happened. I watched a bit of the Momentum meeting, and with one or two exceptions, I was just shocked at the resignation, acceptance, and these calls for spurious unity. Because what is, unity on what basis? So thank you for letting me invite me to speak. Thank you very much. I think that's enough from me for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Totally agree on the unity question. That was quite scary, actually. Okay, John Bridge is the next person from the floor, please. And then Trish.
Yeah, thanks, comrades. In terms of where we should go, it does strike me that the main problem isn't first past the post, it's actually what politics we've got. There's a lot of speculation in the press, most of it complete nonsense about the Labour Party splitting. And if you look at Corbyn's side and you look at the Socialist Campaign Group, you have to ask the question, well, okay, if they split, what the hell is their programme? Is it a personality cult around Jeremy Corbyn? After all, you know, the Socialist Campaign Group, Momentum, are all falling over themselves, saying that they accept, they agree, and they're committed to implement this report. Now, the question is, to me, in terms of, you know, Tina asked the question, would they be prepared to suspend or expel 30 MPs? I think the answer to that is, well, of course they would. The Labour Party, you know, leadership in the form of Keir Starmer, the MPs, really don't give a bugger, you know, losing 30 people if they need to. The question from our point of view is, what about these 30? Because none of them, apart from Chris Williamson, has shown any backbone when it comes to this witch hunt. And I think the explanation for it really is, you know, that what they're engaged in is promoting their own careers. These people are not socialists. It has saddened me to look at John McDonnell. He's been amongst the worst, but a line has been drawn. And I think that those who are prepared to speak up against the witch hunt are on one side, and those that, to all intents and purposes, have gone along with it, or actually, how should I put it, promoted it, are actually on the other side. So I don't expect that Keir Starmer and the Labour bureaucracy will be expelling 30, because what we've got is not 30 heroes in the Socialist Campaign Group. The majority of them are cowards. Just to add one other point before finishing, I agree with what Jackie was saying about anti-racism, but I do think that Tina put a finger on it, that what is going on isn't about Jeremy Corbyn. It was, of course, partially about Jeremy Corbyn and being leader of the Labour Party. What they're moving to do is delegitimize any criticism of Israel, and delegitimize, and I think this is the crucial question, delegitimize anti-capitalism and there being any sort of alternative to capitalist society. So in the United States, that seems to be what's going on. And in Britain, that seems to be what is going on. And yeah, the left is in a really dangerous position when so much of what's passed for the left are actually going along with this narrative. So we do need to do, I think, some serious thinking about our strategy and how we actually fight not only this witch hunt, but fight for socialism under these conditions.
Thank you, John. Trish and then Paul Collins.
Hello, fantastic speakers, amazing, so much better than yesterday. As you've all mentioned, the Momentum people, I mean, John McDonnell just really, just all of them, just constantly apologising for anti-Semitism was so disheartening and so upsetting. I didn't quite know where to go with it, really. So I'm really glad that this happened this evening, because it's kind of galvanising me. But I'm still feeling quite directionless. I'm very pleased to hear some of you and wonderful words about Ken. Ken's making some mistakes now. I forgive him for that. He taught me everything I needed to know in the 80s about equality and inclusion. And as a white person, I needed someone like Ken actually to lead me to the plight of minority groups, and ultimately I will forgive him any mistakes he makes now. I'm sure he's absolutely jaded. Now, I wanted also to mention Pam Bromley, who's I think's on this on here today somewhere. The truth is her name's been all over the report, Ken and Pam. Pam must be feeling quite vulnerable, quite worried, like some of you have been. She will now be attacked. There is a huge concerning attack from whomever we think might be organising this, but from the right towards people like Pam and yourselves, to not just discredit you politically, but also personally. Some black people, I'm sure, wouldn't dream of joining the Labour Party now, particularly young people and maybe black people, because if they're associated with anti-Semitism, that ruins their potential for jobs, for having stability in their ordinary lives. People don't want to be associated with anti-Semitism. And I know that even saying you're Antifa, when I said I was Antifa not that long ago in a work setting, I'm a trainer, and I said that I was Antifa to a group of sort of Hertfordshire women, basically, they said they didn't think that I'd agree with people like Tom Robinson. So what Jackie said is really important. The ordinary people out there think Antifa are the new racists. What Trump is saying is working. And what Tony said about keep saying the lie loud enough and it becomes truth. You know, what we're seeing here at the moment, there's no coincidence that, you know, senior politicians in America are saying that Amnesty International are anti-Semitic. You know, what we're seeing here is a huge move in the whole world. And I'm feeling quite vulnerable, and I'm about to chair a Labour meeting as just a award meeting. I'm only in a, you know, award chair, but I'll be doing a meeting next Thursday. And my instinct is to let everyone say what they like. But I know that this is not allowed now. We're not allowed to say what we like. This is Starmerism is unbelievably shocking. We have been completely silenced in the Labour Party. And I feel a little bit jealous of those of you that are outside being able to say what you like. I feel like I'm constantly worried that I'll be the next person. And I'm sure Pam's feeling very upset by her name now being all over a report. And it's a report that we shouldn't take any notice of. I mean, it's not as if they're Robert Francis, these people. You know, these people are just Tories and lackeys that have been brought in to criticise the left. And we're all suddenly supposed to take them seriously. This government body are a joke. They're an absolute joke. I don't see how they can make decisions about whether we are or aren't anti-Semitic. And why are we only talking about this while the people who are dying in police custody are not Jewish, they're black? But still we're talking about this. It's making me feel really directionless. And what I need is help to know from within the Labour Party, what do we mean by fight? What does that look like? We send a motion forward, a motion supporting obviously Jeremy Corbyn. We'll do that in our fantastic CLP chair is amazing in West Ham, brilliant. We have a fantastic left movement in West Ham, it's fabulous. We'll send it to who? I don't trust any staffers. I don't trust any of the core operation and the machinations in the Labour Party. They hijacked the general election. They will go to any lengths whatsoever to stop the left. They don't care.
Can you wind up now, please? Sorry.
Yeah, cool.
We have so many people who want to come in. Paul, please. Thank you for coming along. Paul. Just one thing before Paul comes in. I mean, we would ask comrades to speak about the report. Of course, you must not self-censor yourself in that way. So it's unlikely they're going to expel you for talking about the report in your meeting, I'd say. So we have to be careful that we don't self-censor ourselves too much as well. Paul, hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hi.
Hi. With regards to being in the Labour Party, I put it, I concur with everything the first of the panelists have said, that, or, three of them said that if you're going to stay in the party, you need to actually speak out unequivocally against the witch hunt. And I come to the conclusion now that if you're not doing so, you're not really doing your job properly. I'll say a bit of my own history on this. It took me a while to see it, but I'm really from the point that I saw on Facebook earlier. Somebody made the point that we couldn't keep using the term witch hunt. And my reply was, I won't name the group, but my reply was simply that it took me a while to see it, but a witch hunt is exactly what's going on, and we couldn't be afraid to say exactly how we see it. In terms of the report, I mean, the thing that stood out for me was that about the independent complaint procedure and the fact that it will have to include an independent body, which presumably would be the Board of Deputies. And of course, as I said in it could the LLA, I get to the Board of Deputies pledges anyway, and I would certainly oppose them having a say on what when they're already biased against the Labour Party to start with. And yeah, so I still think I'm dismayed, really, although, as other people have said, as much as I understand it, I'm dismayed by the number of people that are leaving right in the middle of the NEC election. You know, but I think really it would have been much more effective to stay in, even if it meant that they had to deal with a wave of suspensions, because at some point they're going to have to deal with your case. But my hope is that they deal with so many. You know, I really hope that the leadership have bitten off more than they can chew, if you know what I mean. I'll leave it there so that other people can come in.
Thank you, Comrade.
But thanks for putting this on.
Thank you, Comrade. Cheers. I'm going to bring in Pam now. Pam Bromley, as comrades have mentioned, is mentioned in the report plenty. She and Ken Livingstone are getting it quite thick and fast in that report.
Right. Well, I think what you just said, Tina, illustrates the need for me to have a campaign over what I have actually been saying, because the statement you refer to was not an anti-Semitic statement, and this has been explained over and over again to the Labour Party investigation process. And I'm quite shocked, actually, that people don't realise that. So I'm actually making a gender remark about capitalism, not about the Rothschilds. And in actual fact, I'm defending Jewish bankers, because I'm saying there's absolutely no difference between Jewish banking firms and any others. And I think that needs to be made absolutely clear. And nobody should be mistaken about that one. So, I mean, certainly in terms of the EHRC report, I have been targeted. I think that's partly because I'm a councillor. I think they've gone to the next person down the line. The report is extremely weak, and I would maintain there's absolutely nothing in that report that's anti-Semitic. And I think my campaign, which needs to take place, along with all the other campaigns that have taken place, is to defend the rights of an ordinary working class person and a Labour Party member and a councillor, the right to free speech. I think it's absolutely scandalous the way I've been targeted. What else was I going to say? So what I'm actually doing at the moment, I'm looking at a combination of a legal route and a campaigning route to clear my name, because I think in actual fact we've got to legally prove that what I have said is not anti-Semitic. I think that's the root of all this. I think the EHRC report relies very, very heavily on stuff about me, and I think we could actually completely destroy what is a very, very weak report. So on the Labour Party, we must carry on supporting the reinstatements of Jeremy Corbyn. And I would urge Labour Party members to stay and fight. If you can, at least stay until after the NEC elections. Don't leave part way through because they cancel your vote, apparently. But I think the reality is that the Labour Party will split. I think the most productive way to start a new party is to split from the Labour Party, and I'm hoping now that the various collections of socialists we're managing to hang on to keep together will get involved in that. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you. Steve Burgess, please. Oh, try to hold your phone still.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Hi. So I watched the disaster of a meeting that happened last night, and that meeting was so abhorrent because I mean, I had hope in people like Richard Bergen and so on, and they were coming on saying they wanted to see a Prime Minister Starmer when we've seen what Starmer does to the left. Starmer relies for his power on the entire NEC majority, on the NEC majority. And what I've been repeatedly told, not only by people in the SCG, of course, not only by Momentum Airheads, but also sometimes by people in Labour Against the Witch Hunt, is that we should stay and fight. But we are, of course, walking into machine gun fire here. If we are to be loud, then that means that marks us instantly for suspension and expulsion. So the point here is that if we are to fight, then we have to ask, what are the tactics? And the tactics are not being loud and walking into machine gun fire. The tactics are to get into positions where you can stop Starmer and people like him, Blair and so on, the people where you can stop those people exerting their authority over the rest of the membership. Corbyn was in that position and he failed to use it. If we're ever going to get to that position again, then we have to work out how we're going to get there. Now, it looks to me like most of these people in the SCG are waving the right flag and they've given up entirely. So it's up to people who believe that we should stay and fight to present these tactics, because I'm not hearing any tactics, because those 40, I think it's 39 or 40 NEC members, need to have at least 21 of our guys, of people that recognize the way we think about things on there. And if we don't have those 21 people, then we can still expect to be abused further and be abused more heavily by the people that are currently on there. Now, the majority is consistent currently of mainly union reps and Starmer's cabinet. Starmer has 4 people on there, that's 4, and then there's about 8 or 9 right-wing union reps, and there's a few left-wing union reps. But there's a couple of CLP reps. Even if we win this NEC election, we won't have anything, even if we win 7 out of 9, which is much bigger than anyone's estimate, we won't have anything close to the NEC needed to actually overturn these decisions and overturn these verdicts. What we need, more than anything else, and it is a deal breaker. Without this, the party cannot recover from its left wing. We need a leadership challenge. And right now, I do not see anyone, given last night's sickening performance from Bergen, I don't see anybody who actually looks like a leader. Dan Carden, maybe. I mean, that's the best idea I've got at the moment. But without that, you do not have a fight, because you simply get this referred to the NEC, and then the NEC refers you to, and then the NEC expels you. The one thing we have going in our favour temporarily is the NCC. The NCC can be used to unexpel people using the appeal to the NCC, and it can also be used to get people acquitted if they go down the traditional route. The NCC is currently protecting everybody. I say protecting everybody. It's not protecting everybody perfectly, but
can you start winding up now, Steve, please?
Yeah, it's the ability there to get that to get people inside the party. Final thing I want to say is that this debate we're having tonight is truncated. It's not big enough. It's not long enough. There should be more of them. I'm very grateful for people putting them on. But if you want to get in touch with me at stevedtrm@hotmail.com, that's stevedtrm@hotmail.com. I'll add you to some free speech pro-Corbyn groups that can actually help you decide this in more detail. The text for those, the email address is in the chat discussion.
Yes,
You'll find
you put it in quite a lot there. We've all seen it. Thank you, Steve. Okay, the next person I'm bringing in is Anne McShane. I'm just going to say we have about 6 minutes before we bring in the main speakers again, because they should have really 5 minutes each. So if you could keep to a couple of minutes each, that'd be great. Hi, Anne.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, comrades, and solidarity to comrades in Britain in the Labour Party at the present time facing this new attack, and solidarity obviously to Ken Livingstone and to Pam Bromley, who've been, I think the treatment of whom has been absolutely disgraceful. What I wanted to say is that what is happening for you is not just about something in Britain, but it is really important for all of us internationally. Obviously, I live in Ireland, not far away, but I know that people in the United States have been looking at what's happening. and the suspension of Jeremy Corbyn as something that is an attack on their rights to freedom of speech in the United States, just as much as is potentially an attack on our freedom to speech, freedom of speech here in Ireland and elsewhere. And I think that there has to be absolutely no concessions given at the present time. And I do think that those Labour Party MPs who have refused to speak out or who have put pressure on Corbyn should be exposed and should be criticised. I was shocked when the news came out that I listened to Radio 4 and that there was not one Labour Party left MP came forward to speak in defence of Jeremy Corbyn. It just seemed, I was stunned by that fact. And then to hear afterwards that in fact that he'd been lent on by many of the people in the socialist group of MPs. And just finally to say that one of the things that's also been said is that not only is it obvious that anti-Semitism is not a major issue in the Labour Party, but in fact has been weaponized in order to attack the left and silence the left, but that Jeremy Corbyn himself has been a part of the problem and so far as he has refused to speak out in a firm way against his denigrators. And even today, I think he's still, unfortunately, been far too soft. And I think that, comrades, that as well as supporting Jeremy Corbyn, you also have to criticise him for his conciliation towards his detractors and towards the right wing. And I would just leave it at that. Anyway, solidarity. Thank you, comrades.
Thank you. I'm not sure you can accuse Law of not having criticised Corbyn. I think we did quite a lot of that. Okay. Next person to come in is Mick, please.
Thanks very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Friends, obviously Starmer is trying to muzzle any left voices, any critical voices. Somebody told me he's got a little lab somewhere where they're working on a mask which can work against coronavirus and also muzzle anybody who wants to talk about socialism. I don't know if that's true, but it certainly would fit. I would like to argue that since the attack is happening, was unavoidable, could be seen coming for a very long time, we should actually welcome it because it is going to separate sheep from goats. It reminds me of nothing so much as, I'm old enough to have been involved in the campaign against the war in Vietnam. And the free speech movement, the response to repression, was actually able to raise that campaign to a whole new level. It transformed the situation. I mean, Gandhi's right in the sense that they ignore you, they laugh at you, they fight you, then you win. Except there's nothing automatic about winning. You have to stand your ground. And what we see is that everywhere people actually stand their ground, you know, where, for example, the UCU was taken to an industrial tribunal for anti-Semitism, they won resoundingly because on any sort of approximation to a level playing field, we are going to win. Two more points very briefly, if I may. Sadly, any attempt to say that if you say it was a racist endeavour is to be disparaged and those kind of voices are going to be silenced. Sadly, Israel will come to our support. It will always cross red lines. It will always find new levels of atrocity against the Palestinians, which will shake people, over to our side. But basically, I would argue that we shouldn't see this as an attack, which is some sort of fall from grace by the Labour Party. Anti-colonial movements and people who support anti-colonial movements have always faced repression in this country. We should welcome it, we should embrace it, and we should see that from my own point of view in the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, and I know Tony and other people have embraced this issue very, very warmly as well. When we can fuse the issue of Palestine with the issue of free speech, when we can tie what's happening in Gaza, the crimes there, to crimes against people in this country being denied their basic right to think and speak freely, then I think we move into a whole new area where we can win the middle ground or elements of the middle ground towards supporting us. I think the speakers tonight have been absolutely superb. I've seldom enjoyed 5 speakers like this whom I've been able to appreciate almost without qualification whatsoever.
Thank you, comrade. Stan, this is your chance. 2 minutes, please.
Yes, the Momentum Renewal have shown themselves up, haven't they? Yesterday, they're very naive, saying that the anti-Semitism might be political. They're afraid of the danger of anti-Semitism being politicised. How stupid! And of course, it's been political all the time. The whole campaign is about trying to get Britain and Britain's Labour Party, the Second 11, in as a reliable ally for the United States. But in the States itself, they're reaching peak anti-Semitism. When you get Amnesty International and Oxfam accused, and people that are, people that are in the establishment accused of anti-Semitism, well, okay, that shows they're overreaching. It's a bit desperate as Trump is trying to get re-elected and saying all sorts of things. I want to take issue with Chris's point about Labour is beyond repair. Of course, it's always been bad. It's Lenin's definition from 1921 is a bourgeois workers' party led by reactionaries of the worst kind. The only time when that wasn't true is when Jeremy and John were in charge of the Labour Party or leading it. They're not reactionaries of the worst kind, but that was an aberration, wasn't it? So we've always had that problem, but the struggle goes on in the Labour Party, doesn't it? Blair failed to take back the union link, didn't he? Failed to break the union link. He wanted to return, get the change from Tory and Liberal alternating to Tory and Labour alternating. That was the change that the Labour Party brought about. It was a great step forward, but we still have to fight for socialism within the workers' movement. That means within the Labour Party, within the trade unions. People who are leaving might as well leave their trade union as well, because the trade unions are, very often just as bad on the witch hunt, and certainly they're putting people onto the NEC who do the wrong thing. So we have a struggle throughout the movement, don't we? And that's got a long way to go, and not a time to walk away. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you, Stan. Now we'll have to go back to the main four panelists, and I apologize to all the people who've still got their hand up in the audience. It's just we haven't got enough time, I'm afraid. We must continue the debate, but I'm bringing in Tony now for 5 minutes to come back on some of the issues we've raised.
Right, can you hear me? Yeah, I hope so. I don't think we should make a shibboleth of staying in or going out of the Labour Party. I am firmly opposed to people voluntarily leaving today, but I think given the number of people who are already outside of the Labour Party, who are part of the Corbyn movement, we have to create a vehicle which can include both those inside the Labour Party and those outside the party. We can't simply refer back, and there are great differences between the Labour Party and trade unions. Trade unions are basic class organisations, however distorted. The Labour Party is less and less of a working class representative, I'm afraid. And we are in a dire situation. I mean, the left is weak and it's growing weaker, and we can't simply hold on to nostrums for the sake of what was in the past. One of the most remarkable things about the EHRC report is the fact that it doesn't even attempt to define what anti-Semitism is, which is quite amazing since it accuses people of anti-Semitism. And the reality is that it has nothing to say, because it knows that whatever it does say is going to be picked apart. And if you look at the IHRA, it didn't endorse the IHRA. If we look at the IHRA, which is the kind of lodestone of the Labour right, it is a definition that above all anti-Semites support, whether it's Orban, whether it's Trump, whether it's Steve Bannon. They have no problems with the IHRA because it's not about anti-Semitism. And I think that's really what we have to bear in mind. And when they talk about anti-Semitism, they mean anything but anti-Semitism. And we should be clear about that. It's simply a weapon in their hands. And we should also be clear about Zionism in Israel. That the Israeli state is an inherently, I mean, we're told you can't say it's a racist endeavor, which means that you define for Palestinians what they're allowed to say and not say, and therefore you're accusing the victims of colonialism of being racist. It's like the Irish. I mean, the Irish often came out with very anti-English things which you could have called racist, but really, were the Irish the racists? Were they the guilty party? No, of course not. We have to be clear. Israel is an inherently racist state. Why? What does it mean to be a Jewish state? Well, it means that I can go to Israel anytime I want and claim citizenship and live there, but someone who's born and brought up there, who's a Palestinian, has no such right. And if that's not racist, then people obviously don't know what racism is. I think that's quintessentially racist. And of course, everything flows from it. The programs of Judaization and so on and so forth. And all this anti-Semitism nonsense has been about is the defense of not only Israel, but Israel as imperialism's strategic watchdog in the area. It's about colonialism. And let's face it, the Jewish labor movement pioneered this campaign, and they were affiliated to the Labour Party in 1920 as Poale Zion. And in 1920, Poale Zion represented nobody in the Jewish working class. It was supported because even then it was seen as a colonialist outfit. And the Labour Party historically has been a party of the British Empire every bit as much as the Tory party. And people forget that. Its opposition to apartheid came actually very late in the day. Originally, it supported the Boers, who they saw as being anti-colonialist, which of course they were not. And we should critique the IHRA. I mean, I find it amusing that they say that if you compare Israel to the Nazis, that's terribly offensive, and therefore it's anti-Semitic. Well, Yuri Avneri, who was actually a Zionist, who was born in Germany and escaped, he was a refugee, a peacemaker. He wrote, Israel today is comparable to pre-1939 Nazi Germany. So did Professor Zev Sternhol, who has just died. He was another Zionist. It's obvious to people living there that there are very similar signs to what happened in Nazi Germany. Arabs, Palestinian Israelis are basically quarantined into certain areas of Israel and are not allowed to expand. That's exactly what happened to the Jewish population in 1938 onwards in Nazi Germany. To say you can't make a comparison means you actually can't have any historiography, because you cannot understand history if you don't make comparisons. It's by making comparisons that you actually understand what happened in the past. It's an interpretation of the past into the present, in a sense. So I think we have to fight. We have to declare war. And the major mistake of Momentum is actually when they say we unify with Starmer. Starmer is our enemy. He represents capitalism inside the Labour Party. He is an agent of capital. And the idea that you can unify with him is like the rapist unifying with the victim. It's an absurdity, a total absurdity. Starmer is our enemy. He is a representative of the deep state. In fact, he's the only British MP who's on the Trilateral Commission. He's the person who initiated the prosecution of Assange. There is nothing in him we can support. Whether we challenge him or not, or whether he can be challenged, is irrelevant. Starmer is our enemy. And if Momentum thinks it can unify with him, it's bankrupt politically. Thank you, comrades.
Sorry, Chris, please, next. 5 minutes, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. Jackie, sorry, Chair, should I say. Yeah, what I'll try and do is give a line to each of, or as many as I can, of the contributions that we've heard from the floor. I just want to pick up on John Davis's comments about the importance of a new movement, and certainly, and he made reference, and I'm grateful to him for the new movement that I'm involved in trying to create. And I do think we need to build links with other groups and movements which are being established. That is essential. And he's right, I think, to point out the absurdity of those who are allegedly on the left talking about diplomacy. In fact, John Landsman was praising the importance of diplomacy and citing John McDonnell's tweet following Jeremy's suspension from the party. It's incredible, and frankly, outrageous, in my opinion, that you've got people who are allegedly on the left talking about diplomacy rather than solidarity. And it is important that we absolutely have to fight. And I think Leah's comments were also well made. And it's preposterous that the EHRC didn't take into account representations that were made by JVL and other anti-Zionist Jewish people who did make representations to the inquiry, and they were just discounted. So they were very much coming at it from a very partisan position, and were always determined, I think, to find against the party. That was what they were charged with doing, and that's what they ended up coming out with. And when you think about it, they only were able to cite two, questionable cases to give them the legitimacy, such as it was, to actually make the finding that they did. John Bridge made a good point about, we need to, look at how we can sort of, move forward. And what I would say is that an electoral strategy on its own is inadequate. We need a grassroots movement as well to buttress that, for sure. And when he makes the point about, would they suspend 30 MPs, and you think they would? Well, I think that's what Jeremy should have done. Jeremy should have asserted his authority, and he should have actually withdrawn the whip from a number of those individuals. And I think that would have sent a very strong message. And in fact, when on the day I was due to be suspended, or the day I was suspended, a former leader of the party was threatening that were I not to be suspended by the end of the day, 30 MPs were going to walk. Well, they should have let them walk. The problem is, and I'd say to John, that the Parliamentary Labour Party is stuffed full of cowards and traitors. I mean, the line in the red flag that says cowards flinch and traitors sneer could have been written for the Parliamentary Labour Party, because that's all we have, cowards and traitors, I'm sorry to say. One of the comments that I want to just pick up in the chat there from John Sweeney, he said that, look, Jeremy was never really in control. And he's absolutely right, he wasn't. I think he could have asserted his authority, and he should have, in my opinion, appealed over the heads of the Parliamentary Labour Party and the National Executive Committee to the mass membership. And I think he would have had overwhelming support had he done that. Steve made a point about getting into a position to stop the likes of Starmer. Frankly, I just can't see how that's going to be possible. And he did actually highlight some of the difficulties in actually doing that. But in my opinion, I think it would be far better, rather than expending energy inside the Labour Party, is use that energy to build an alternative movement. And that's the way forward, in my opinion. And Mick Napier made a good point, I think, about the importance of free speech. We really do need, I think, to stand up for free speech. And Tony, Jackie, Mark and myself have been involved, and Tina as well, in a campaign around free speech and the importance of it. And obviously we need to ratchet that up in order to help us to, win this really, crucial battle. I'm pleased that Pam came on the line, and I've looked at what Pam said, and she's absolutely right. There's nothing that she said that was in any way anti-Semitic. It's been completely misconstrued, deliberately so, maliciously so. And I think that had Pam and Ken and others joined us in a legal challenge, indeed had the party started a legal challenge against the EHRC, it could have destroyed the whole process. But the Left Legal Fighting Fund that I established when I won my case, the High Court case against the Labour Party, and had the costs returned, and we've been trying to raise funds for that, stands ready to mount a legal challenge for Ken and for Pam if we can find legal grounds to do so. And if we are able to find some legal grounds, then obviously we will be mounting a legal a fundraising campaign, and I hope that people will contribute to it. I think the final speaker that I made a note of was Stan, and he was saying he disagreed with me. Well, I disagree with you, Stan. And I frankly think that staying in the Labour Party actually gives cover to the likes of Keir Starmer, because they can say, look, the Labour Party has, both wings, left and right, and look at these members, we have people with differing views. And I honestly think that we're doing, in my opinion, a disservice actually to the wider movement by staying inside the Labour Party. I think it would be far better if people take a different view. And I agree with people, if they are going to stay in the Labour Party, it's important to speak out. But I honestly think that our efforts really would be better deployed, actually creating a new movement outside the Labour Party. I know it's difficult, but it's not impossible. It's been done in the past, it can be done in the future. And there are other examples around the world where it's been done. And we can do it here. Not stop wasting time. I mean, you know, I made this point. At the end of the day, what we've seen, I mean, Tony Benn used to talk about the cuckoos taking over the Labour nest. They've taken it over. They've destroyed it. They've smashed all the eggs. And like Humpty Dumpty and all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. We can't put the eggs back together, comrades. It's impossible. We need to build a new nest outside the Labour Party. Stop flogging a dead horse, for goodness sake, and let's work to fight for socialism and actually get ourselves involved in extra parliamentary action with a view to ultimately, in the end, creating an alternative political vehicle. But if you are going to stay, please speak out, because it's pointless being a member of a political party if all you're going to do is just go along with the outrageous direction that Keir Starmer and his cohorts in the Parliamentary Labour Party are taking it. What we've got now in this country is two establishment parties who support corporate capitalism, and you've got basically two sides of the same coin. And that's really not any choice for people in an election. And if you stay inside the Labour Party and you know, don't sort of challenge that, well, then you're complicit. And that's really no place to be, I think, certainly not for socialists in the party. So that's my two penneth, Chair, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much, Chris. We certainly agree on that point, that if you do stay, you have to fight back, and I think all the speakers agree with that. Mark, for 5 minutes, then Jackie. Thank you. You have to unmute yourself, comrade.
I just showed you the new book. And I think in order for us to go forward in a way that makes sense, we have to analyze what went wrong on this question with the Corbyn project.
Absolutely.
And you've heard that Jackie, Tina, Chris, Ken was invited, and myself are members of a campaign for free speech in the Labour Party. And in our webinar held in July, Tariq Ali said this: Corbyn should have said, yes, there is anti-Semitism in society. Yes, there may be some in the Labour Party. There's certainly more in the right-wing parties, like the Conservative Party, that the far-right Britain First members have been queuing up to join. But we are going to fight any attempt to stop us speaking on Palestine or being critical of Israel. He added that the party should have firmly stated it is complete slander and a slur to say that the Labour leadership, Corbyn in particular, are either anti-Semitic or encourage anti-Semitism. I mean, a big fight could have been waged. We may not have won, but it would have been a much better thing to do than caving in. And I know it's Halloween today, and what's happened is a bit of a Halloween horror story to Jeremy Corbyn. Where's his unison? I saw this mentioned in the chat for some of the unison members coming out to support him. And we should press the unison candidates lining up to try and replace Prentice. That's Roger Mackenzie, Paul Holmes, and Hugo Pierre on the left, among them, to come out fighting for Jeremy in his union that he used to represent as a full-time official, along with Bernie Grant. I remember both of them before 1983 when they got elected. Grassroots Black Left has written to all of the candidates on health issues, including the disproportionate way that Black people, African, Caribbean, and Asian people have been affected by COVID, myself included. And, you know, we will press these issues with these candidates. They must be called to account. It's outrageous that the new General Secretary of the Labour Party, David Evans, has sent diktats to constituency Labour parties saying motions about the EHRC report and Jeremy Corbyn's suspension are not competent business. Ignore him. Flood the GS and the NEC with motions. It saddens me that Jenny Formby did the same to block motions supporting me after almost 40 constituency Labour parties from all around the country had passed motions calling for my reinstatement. We must have a Black Lives Matter type mass campaign of civil disobedience to seize the party back for socialism and justice and get its leadership to fight on issues like police deaths in custody of Black people, the disproportionate number of Black people stopped and searched 10 times more than white people, Grenfell, justice for the Grenfell victims, the asylum seekers, the migrants, the Muslims, predominantly poor people who died in that inferno, that totally preventable inferno. So I hope that we can build something which is positive. I've tried to give some examples of where we can fight back and what we can do, rather than just talking. We need action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade. Totally agree. I put in the chat the Labour Left Alliance model motion on solidarity with, well, asking for the reinstatement of Jeremy Corbyn and also taking on the witch hunt. This is not the time to lay low, and this is not the time for calls for unity or to self-censor yourself. So please try to move motions in your branch and CLP. Jackie Walker is our last speaker tonight.
Thank you, and I'm not going to take too long because I think the others have really summed the situation up really well. I think it's been a great meeting, actually. And I think that, you know, Labour Against the Witch Hunt has this real important role now to go forward with, and has a real ability to galvanise in terms of actually reaching out and allowing people a space where they can actually talk together about what's going on. So I just want to say that I think I'm very moved as well by what Mick Napier said. I think rather than seeing this as this terrible period of defeat, which of course it is, we should also understand that always at the bottom of this defeat come the seeds of change and renewal. And this is a point where we can see real differentiation happening. It's always very useful to have real differentiation happening. And I know for me, I no longer look at people who I used to as leaders or people who will tell me or be able to show me the way. So I think what we have to do is see this as a period of renewal where we start to actually find out who and what we can rely on, who is just in the political game so that they can be in Parliament and get the pension and get on TV and that's it. Because if that's what it's about, there really isn't any point. And I think what we're going to see, and I think there is a pattern of this coming out, is that the real innovation is coming from the streets. That's where it's coming from. And where that's going to take us, I don't know. But it's a period, as much as it's terrifying, it's also hugely, hugely exciting. So let's be there. Where can we be? What can we do? We have to be at the points of the most change, where the people are on the streets, where the voices are raised. Thank you. And thank everyone.
Thank you very much, comrades. I think that was a really good meeting. It's really important to talk collectively as well and not just have rallies where you're allowed to watch the speakers. So I think actually perhaps Labour Against the Witch Hunt should try to do more meetings where we get people to talk and discuss with each other how we're doing it. Labour Left Alliance has a number of educational events lined up, and there you can speak and intervene. And on November the 4th, Tony Greenstein and Moshe Machove will be discussing what is Zionism. Please join that event. I think for the main key to take away perhaps is the need for collectivity. The worst thing I think that comrades can do now is just to drop out, become self-defeated, self-censor, or just become really demoralized. It's easily done. It happens to all of us. This is a very difficult period, but we have to stick it out. I think we have to try to collectively organize, to discuss, to educate ourselves, and to educate the rest of the Labour left and say what went wrong the last 5 years. There is a worrying trend to just move on and just forget about what happened and forget about all the mistakes that have been made. And I think we have a real duty to make sure that these lessons are learned and that we don't forget about it. So join Labour Left Alliance, join Labour Against the Witch Hunt, almost join anything, but don't just leave and don't just drop out and don't just become demoralized individuals. That's the worst thing. We've had 410 people in this meeting, which is fantastic, with another 120 have watched it online on Facebook, and we will put this video up online tomorrow so you can share it with other comrades who have not seen it. So thank you very much all for coming. Please try to put motions forward, fight back collectively. Thank you all, comrades. Bye bye. Thank you very much, comrades. I think that was a really good meeting. It's really important to talk collectively as well, and not just have rallies where you're allowed to watch the speakers. So I think actually perhaps Labour Against the Witch Hunt should try to do more meetings where we get people to talk and discuss with each other how we're doing it. Labour Left Alliance has a number of educational events lined up, and there you can speak and intervene. And on November the 4th, Tony Greenstein and Moshe Machove will be discussing what is Zionism. Please join that event. I think for the main key to take away perhaps is the need for collectivity. The worst thing I think that comrades can do now is just to drop out, become self-defeated, self-censor, or just become really demoralized. It's easily done. It happens to all of us. This is a very difficult period, but we have to stick it out. I think we have to try to collectively organize, to discuss, to educate ourselves, and to educate the rest of the Labour left and say what went wrong the last 5 years. There is a worrying trend to just move on and just forget about what happened and forget about all the mistakes that have been made. And I think we have a real duty to make sure that these lessons are learned and that we don't forget about it. So join Labour Left Alliance, join Labour Against the Witch Hunt, almost join anything, but don't just leave and don't just drop out and don't just become demoralized individuals. That's the worst thing. We've had 410 people in this meeting, which is fantastic, with another 120 have watched it online on Facebook, and we will put this video up online tomorrow so you can share it with other comrades who have not seen it. So thank you very much all for coming. Please try to put motions forward, fight back collectively. Thank you all, comrades. Bye bye.